All right. Welcome, fellow Spellbreakers, to another edition of the Spellbreakers podcast. It's been a little while, so I'm glad to have one of our most famous guests of all time, the one, the only CJ Smith. For those of you who don't know, which you should, is in 2008, CJ Smith was freed from what he titles the unfulfilled state, which was created by the personal interface of information pushed upon us by the Matrix system and its architects. Since that time, he has been operating in his natural fulfilled state, which I hope you will guide us towards today. He's the author of 2 books and also shares methods for self-realization and well-being. Please check him out. I have his channel below. CJ, welcome back to the podcast. How you doing, man?
Good to be with you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, as we were talking about offline, it's been a while. It's been a journey. Got to do probably a little catch-up video or two for some of the followers of the channel, but I've been good, man. What's been new with you? What's going on?
Life, life. This body moving moment to moment. Yeah. Oh, many things, different things. Um, yeah, it's been a while since we last spoke. 9 months, is it, or something, I think? 10 months?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what comes and speaking about whatever comes up in this conversation.
Yeah, I noticed you didn't have a MAGA hat on today. Are you a woke lefty, CJ? I notice you're not part of the current awakening. What's going on? Are you a shill of the deep state, CJ?
Well, I don't seem to side with any political party, and I've always seems to have been that way. I never really seem to side with any particular ideology or party or identify with any. And to me, left and right are just two, what is it they say, two cheeks of the same arse, as I've heard it said before. So, so I don't really roll with that.
Yeah, I dig that as well, man. But yeah, I'd be curious. What are you making of all this? We have on the one side, I think Trump's doing some good things, I guess. um, there seems this era where people think the Great Awakening is upon us. And it does seem like a lot of these spells and ignorance are being broken, but at the same time, it also kind of feels like business as usual. So I'd be curious about your take about Trump, not even him specifically, but just kind of the era we're in, where a lot of people on the right think we're finally on our way to breaking the matrix, if you will. where, you know,
Well, maybe a false, maybe a different version of the Matrix. Maybe the Matrix upgrades itself in some way, continuously upgrades, has to shift after, has to move with the times. When people are starting to become more conscious and aware of what's happening, then the old tricks don't work anymore. You have to create some new tricks. And if the system wants to remain in control, so it has to reshuffle things, maybe give something to support, give something to get behind, so it makes it feel like things are moving in the right direction. Maybe they are moving in the right direction in some way, but what when it comes to breaking out of the mind matrix, I would say you have to go all the way. You have to go all the way. And so to stop at any place, to get identified with any side or any political party is only to go so far and to get caught once again, you know. So so it's interesting to watch and see, and there's good things being brought up. But what we have to also remember is that the ones that you could say enforce what people think of as the external matrix system are moves and moves and moves and moves ahead. It's like a chess game, and these people are the greatest strategists. So the moves and moves ahead. So many things that are unfolding now have probably been mapped out from long, long ago. And this is why it can't be defeated by intellect. It can't be defeated by strategy. It requires a different intelligence. Not an intellectual intelligence, but a natural intelligence. An intelligence that is at the heart of the universe itself. That intelligence is spontaneous, is sensitive, is inclusive, but also is not bound by anything, doesn't get stuck in any position or any ideology. It's fluid, is sensitive, and it's operating moment to moment. It's not stuck in time, or it needs to be like something in the past, or it needs to be something greater in the future. It's immediate. What is immediately happening now? You know, where is the life now? So anything other than that is the matrix. It's this artificial, it's the artificial stuff that's been passed on. And it upgrades itself. Right? The matrix, as we think of it, has changed many times over. And so maybe this is another changing of that. But we'll see. Let's see what unfolds. But also, when I say let's see, I mean, where is the immediate action of each so-called individual? Because many people, they look and, oh, things are changing, so I don't have to do anything. Right? No, I'm not saying that anybody can do anything. I'm saying that there is an action there, an immediate action beyond the person. And that is the natural intelligence. And operating from that natural intelligence is a response. And the response is never stuck in a pattern of the past. It's never stuck in conditioning programming. So therefore it's outside of the matrix system, outside of the mind matrix, which are really one in the same. You know. So if somebody's focused on this political party, what this person is saying, that person is saying, and then resting on that, then to me that is just another blockage, another barrier in the way. Each being is alone. Everybody's alone with this. They must go all the way. The inner freedom is aloneness. And aloneness is all oneness. You know? So you yourself have to go all the way. No one else can.
Yeah, it's very well said. For me, I've been doing a lot of reflecting lately, as I've taken quite a bit of a break off the podcast. And for me, really thinking about what makes a spell, right? And if I were to really boil it all down, it would be convincing somebody that somebody other than themselves can solve their problems. And that really seems to be something we're kind of brainwashed into at a young age, that Superman will swoop down at the end of the time. Trump, our savior, will save us from ourselves, or save us from the deep state. this kind of archetype is hammered into us. And at no point is there a solution to even not only search within ourselves, but just even grassroots solutions. Build a community, grow your own food, be more self sufficient, solve your own problems, start at home first, fix your relationships first, fix yourself first. That's never an option. It's always vote for this person, give your energy away. Right? That just seems to be, to me, that is the matrix, is just perpetuating that kind of system of giving our energy to someone external to us.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that, and how does that kind of fit into your philosophy?
There is no savior. Nobody's coming to save, because nobody can. How can anyone make anybody else free, truly free? When I say freedom, I don't mean freedom of choice or freedom of action, but a freedom where the intelligence that you essentially are is not bound or tied up or entangled in anything, which is the trap of thought. We've been given all these thought traps, all of these different thought traps, philosophies, belief systems, knowledge, all from the past. And all that does is create a bubble where someone gets stuck in that particular bubble. And ultimately that bubble's only going to pop from the inside out, not from the outside. So nobody can come and pop that. And to me, politics is just a talking shop, right? The word parliament, parley, means talk. So it's a talking shop. When you go into, you look at them in parliament, they're all dressed up in costumes, at least where it comes from, certainly in the UK. They dress up with wigs and their robes, and they're all shouting. It's like WWE. Everyone's pretending to be against each other. It's the illusion of choice. It's, as you said, the externalization of the energy. You're watching somebody else deciding things. And people watch and think that those people are interested in them, that those people want to do what's good for them, when really they're just serving their own interests. The revolving door of politics and big business and military, where so much money is made and so much control is garnered. Do you think they want to let go of that? They want to maintain that. So one of the best ways to maintain it is you create the illusion where somebody thinks that they're free, but they're not really free. That is the greatest prison. The prison where you don't even realize it's a prison. You think you're free, so you won't try to even break free. First, you have to realize you're not free. You have to realize what the prison is. And actually, the prison is not even external. The prison is the mind matrix. That's the first software, that's the first AI, the first artificial intelligence that's been given, passed on to us all. And when someone lives through that, they live in an artificial state, a bubble, and they lose touch with the natural state. And all the while that natural state is there, that natural intelligence is there, completely aligned with the totality of the universe. But in the artificial state, it's cut off from that totality. And it's an experience of feeling separate. But in the artificial state, it's cut off from a sense of lack, that totality. An experience of either feeling like a victim or feeling like a controller. And through that comes fear. And fear is the thing that contracts and cuts one off and closes one further. So in the natural state, there's an openness there. Sometimes I call it the and this state, because it's inclusive, and this negative emotion, and this negative thought, and this challenging situation, and this. Not to get away from that. That's not freedom. But first one has to recognize the limitations of the knowledge that's been given and the mind, and to see that life cannot be understood through that. And this natural state, this natural intelligence cannot be got by that. So there's no freedom in that. There's no freedom in the knowledge. There's no freedom in the thought, everything that's been passed on. That only keeps people stuck in a cycle, in a loop, in a Groundhog Day, repeating the same cycles over and over again. It's a very dense, low state, frequency. And in that, there's a siphoning off of that energy, the natural energy. But in the natural state, there's a fulfillment of that energy, an infinite supply of that energy, like a self-sufficiency. And when someone operates from that, then their energy is only coming from the very source. It's not coming from an external source. If it comes from an external source, then whoever controls that external source controls you. You know? And what the system has done on many different levels is to create a situation where you're dependent on an external source for as many things as possible and for that energy. And that's what makes people enslaved to it. Because somebody thinks that they are a separate person, this artificial self, they are going to be constantly giving away their energy all the time. They don't realize that there's this infinite supply within. So once you wake up to that infinite supply within, that's the only thing that you need to rely upon in its deepest, truest sense. And then on the surface, of course, on the surface, the human experience, it appears like you're interdependent in many ways. But inwardly, in terms of what you really are, you're completely free, completely self-sufficient in that, you know. So there's all of these things that are always set up. It's always trying to move and shift in that direction to give you more things to become dependent upon. And whoever controls that controls you. So to me, there is no outside savior. There is no... Politics is just a stage show. It's just theatre. Right? They even call it an act of parliament. Acts and statutes, legislation. It's not even real law. It's not the natural law. These are just man-made, artificial laws. It's just an act. Why is it an act? Because they're acting. If everybody says, no, we're not going to go along with this act that you've just passed, then what power does it have? It has no power at all, you see. I've heard that's why they say it's called a statute, because it stands still unless you give it consent to do something with it. You have to give these things consent. And this is the secret that they know, is that it's all comes down to consent. That permission, giving permission. And if you give permission, if you give consent, then you start to play a game. And that's what the society is. It's a game. That's what the matrix system is. It's a game, you know. But most people are playing that game unknowingly, unconsciously.
Yeah, that's very well said. I stress that a lot. That especially in Canada, I even did an early podcast, basically proving that Canada was never even ratified as a proper nation. But at the same time, that doesn't really matter because it's like a mafia, right? Um, and it doesn't, tell the mafia that they weren't properly ratified, and that their, articles of incorporation aren't in order. It won't make that much of a difference. And it's the same thing here, right? I don't know how much you follow about Canadian politics, but we're kind of every week we're finding a new low for corruption and apathy. But at the same time, I feel like the silver lining is that the people have, like, the politicians, the controllers, whoever, the governors, as we Trump calls our prime minister. They've never had less of a mandate to govern. Nobody cares. They have no approval ratings. Everything is just, but it's down to our, it's down to us still taking these people seriously. Like, these people literally could just be actors on a screen, and then we see it, and then we rearrange our life accordingly. A lot of people are spreading fear about, the hacking coming when it'll be in a dark age and no internet. I don't think they'll ever pull the internet for a second, because I think if they stop for 1 hour, one day, the constant stream of this is your reality, this is the new normal, this is the, all of that stuff, it would just stop. Like, people would start reading books and making families and growing food. So I think they need that constant stream for us to then make it real, right? So, but how do we fix that? How do we tell that to people? Because, like, I am concerned the direction things are heading here, but I don't think voting will change it. I know giving my energy to worry actually enables these people, and so I'm trying to build my own little communities and, like, trading groups and stuff. But I mean, do you think there is still room for activism? Do you think there still is room for taking external actions for one's country or one's people or tribe? Or what would you recommend? Would you recommend just totally checking out completely? Yeah.
Yeah. You see, everyone has, well, not everyone, but many people want a solution. And a solution only comes from the conclusions that somebody has already. And then the solutions often create more problems because there's an interference. We're trying to interfere with the natural way that things are. You look at the earth, it's only the humans that are seeming to be the problem. It's only the humans that are experiencing things being a problem. There's no problem in nature. There's no problem with the animals and the insects. So what does that say? That says that it's the thinking. It's the thinking, the same repetitive thinking, to try to come up with solutions through thought, which are only perpetuating more of the problems. So we often don't want to see that they're connected, that problems and solutions go together. I don't see any problem. Really, there's no problem. But because people think that there are problems, they go trying to create many solutions, which only perpetuate more problems. Even those people that you would consider the people that are you could say the architects of the matrix, whatever you perceive that to be, some control system in many different ways, many different levels, that is arising out of trying to create some kind of solution. Now, a solution who benefits who? I mean, that's a question. But still, it's a kind of solution, to get a certain result. But what if somebody doesn't, what if we're not trying to solve something? What if we see that there is no problem? Then what would need to be done? In other words, the constant action and trying to move towards a solution is only interfering more with it. It's like this idea of, a river, and the river is, you've kicked a stone into the river and it floats to the bottom and it kicks up all the dirt. And so the water's all dirty. What do? Someone might try thrashing around in the water trying to get all the dirt out. But the more they thrash around in the water, what's happening? It's getting more dirty, isn't it? But if you just leave it alone, then the dirt settles by itself and the water becomes clean again. So the constant insistence of interfering with everything all the time, has it not occurred to humanity that it's its constant need and compulsion to interfere in the first place that is what's causing the so-called problem, or what they perceive as a problem? You see? So that keeps it going. So I don't see that anything has to be done. Too much is being done. Too much is being done. But the problem is that has been set in motion. So it's been set in motion, so people think I've got to come up with some new solution for these problems that are already in motion. But that only creates more motion. It's like turning a bike upside down and you spin a wheel. How do you get the wheel to stop? Well, you're not going to get it to stop by constantly spinning it. You just stop spinning it. And as you stop spinning it, it comes to a stop by itself. So nature achieves everything. We're not willing to look at how nature achieves everything perfectly in its own timing, and it doesn't struggle. Nature doesn't struggle to create anything, to achieve anything. But through that artificial sense of self, which has been given and passed on, there's the sense that everything is a problem, and so you need a solution to everything, and so then there's all this effort to try to interfere with things all the time and rearrange things, and everybody's always got a better idea. My idea is the right idea. My philosophy, my political party, my belief system. And it just repeats the same cycles over and over again. Slightly different on the surface, but ultimately the same. And have we not seen that throughout the whole of history? It's the same. It's always been the same. And then that knowledge gets passed on. History, knowledge gets passed on to perpetuate the cycle again and again. So I don't see that there's any problem, and so therefore I don't think that any solution is needed. Nature is right there, and everything is fine in nature. And when one is operating from the natural state, a new response comes. How to respond? Respond from that. There can only be a response from the natural intelligence. There can't be a response from the artificial. It can only be a reaction, and the reaction always leads to the same patterns, the same problems.
Yeah, very well said. I found myself kind of enthralled or taken more by the ego and thinking to myself, if I only had complete dictatorial power, I could turn it around. You know, like I could do it if I had complete authority. You know, like my wish was, you know, their command kind of thing. I'm like, I could do it. I could turn this whole ship around. And I think that's really the root of ego within us, right? We think, you know, if we can assert ourselves and our
Yes.
will with enough force, you know, we are the difference, and
Yeah.
that's universal. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to there, is that many people throughout all of history have had that exact same thought. Let's say almost all were well-meaning, you know, but still we see that whenever a will is imposed, it always creates more problems. And
Yeah.
it seems like it's almost impossible to make things better on a you know, I struggle with that because I don't want to be blackpilled, be like there's no hope. But I think really at the same time, if you're honest with yourself, there's no person in a leadership position kind of ever that's made things really better without also creating way more problems that you have to clean up after. So I guess that's kind of what
Yeah.
you're talking about, right? That anytime we try to fix something, we somehow either make it worse or create new problems.
Exactly. You know, someone tries to, they say, okay, this person is, well, I'll give you an example actually, what I was only hearing either yesterday or today. Um, and it was about the United States in relation to Russia. I think it was Russia in the late 80s, and this idea that because in their eyes Russia is this kind of move towards a totalitarian state, like a dictator moving towards a totalitarian state, that they have to, in some way, become more totalitarian in their own country to combat that, you know? So, in other words, look at the way that the
That
United
they have
States and the West have gone to all different countries to try and impose democracy on all of these countries, only causing more problems, only stirring up more trouble. So, what is it they say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So, maybe on some level the intentions are good. Someone has good intentions. You know, and we've got to spread this. Everybody should have this. Everybody should have my philosophy. Everybody should have my belief system. This is what often has happened throughout history. But then it causes the opposite effect. Because the moment you impose anything on anybody, you're going to get that opposite effect come. It can't happen like that. Things have to happen in an organic way, a natural way. And the only way for something to happen naturally for the human being is when the human being is operating from that natural intelligence. Because then, at the very right moment, a response comes in which an action happens. There's an immediate action coming from that response, from that natural intelligence. It's from a deeper, higher intelligence, if we can say that, a more aligned intelligence. But when it's coming from the ego, from the mind, from the person who thinks, I know best, then it just stirs things up and causes another problem. So for every solution, for every so-called solution that is created, there's born another problem out of it. And so the cycle continues again and again. This is the loop of the mind of the artificial person, the artificial self, stuck in its own repetitive knowledge, stuck in its own thought, problems and solutions, because it's holding so many conclusions already. Rather than being honest enough to admit, I don't know. I simply don't know. Not, no, I know. I got the answer. Everybody should listen to me. I don't know. And in I don't know, there is an opening, because thought stops. In I don't know, thought stops, and there is an opening in which then that natural intelligence begins to operate through. It can fully operate. And then a response comes, and then a true solution, if you will, comes from that natural intelligence. Not that we think it is necessarily a solution, but a higher way comes, you know. So it's the artificial self. When it is not there, then the natural intelligence can function effortlessly, harmoniously, in a state of alignment. But ego is always getting in the way of that process. And then there is a fighting. No, my belief is better than your belief, this political party, so on and so forth. And so it just continues the same cycle over and over. And that's not nihilistic, and there's no hope that's needed in that. Because hope is what? Hope is hoping for something better in the future, a future that doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. Hoping it will be how it used to be. Well, now how it used to be is gone. There's only this immediate. There's only what is immediate. The natural is always immediate. Whereas through the artificial self, through the memory, through the conditioning, it's past and future time. It's stuck in time. So it's doomed to repeat the same patterns. But only now can something fresh happen. Only in this immediate can something fresh happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so interesting because exactly as you said, if we look to nature, we don't see animals murdering each other. We see harshness and viciousness. It's not like animals are all frolicking around, but we don't see like a vindictive, what we call evil, like killing for the sake of killing, or, harming
Just
someone.
for survival.
Yeah. Yeah. Or harming somebody because it feels good, or what we would call psychopathic behavior. It's, I'm not romanticizing the harshness of nature, but you can kind of see the order to it. Whereas, the system, I'd be curious. I know you've probably thought a lot about it. To me, it really doesn't, it seems non-human how it works. It seems psychopathic at its core. Like that a machine is kind of running things behind the scene. And it's felt that way for a while for me. Because it's always moving towards dehumanization and turning us into kind of robots. And so at the same time, I think the ego is separation from nature, right? I think it's actually a false entity that we created to separate from nature. In that back in the day we were naked and afraid, so they tell us, right? And so instead of just fully accepting our lot, we decided to, whether it was eating too much salmon or something, we generated a frontal lobe which said, hey, you know what? I can overcome this. I can conquer this. I can, start, make fire, whatever they tell us. But essentially, all of humanity, we've been trying to get away from nature. We've been trying to escape nature, the harshness, the unpredictability, the realness, the rawness, the presence of nature to, I think that actually is what civilization is. It is our escape from the natural world. So maybe it is simply our systems reflect that, but at the same time, you know, just looking into the system itself, some of the revelations we're seeing, the kind of people higher up are pretty much evil. They're doing things with minors that, I think Epstein Island is just the tip of the iceberg. But like, yeah, what do you think created the system? Was it simply our collective like wills? Like, was it the archons? What do you think is going on with our systems? Because it doesn't feel human. It feels kind of antithetical to humanity. But is that just a natural part of us all collectively trying to escape nature, or is there something more nefarious going on here?
Hmm.
Simple question.
Well, oh yeah, very simple question, yeah. Well, ultimately, I don't know, and that's okay. And who does know? And are we honest if we say that we know? But what I can say is that, by looking at the way that life functions and operates, we can see that at different levels there is an order to things. There is a kind of hierarchy to things, and these things play themselves out. And some say that the human being was genetically modified in some way, genetically created in some way, or tampered with in some way. And since that time, it seems that for most human beings, or all human beings, at some time or another, they've been battling with themselves internally. And there is this kind of battle between the natural and the artificial, if you will. And as you said, it's like people have been trying to escape from nature. There's been some fear, and I'm not against technology. I'm not against knowledge. To function in the society, we need knowledge. Technology has its place, but when it becomes primary rather than a secondary thing, that is where a lot of the problems come. And there can be an atrophying of the natural abilities and the functioning of that natural intelligence when it's taken over by the artificial, when the artificial becomes the priority. And that's what you're seeing certainly now, in the near future, it seems, is whether it be chips in the body, chips in the brain, uh, augmented reality, simulated reality. These are all things, even just things that people are doing already on the mobile phones and social media, and all these things are having effects where they're atrophying in some way. In one way, they create a different kind of functioning that you could say is beneficial in some ways, but then in another way, it's actually atrophying. So, somehow this has to be worked out. What needs to be primary and what is secondary? To me, the answer is obvious about that, because nature, the universe, is the primary, because anything that's artificial is happening within that. So you can't take the natural universe away, because then you can't even have the playing around with the artificial. So the artificial is something happening within the natural, so the natural must be the primary, you know. But if it becomes secondary, that's when then the problems come. Someone then falls out of alignment with that, and they start to operate in a very artificial way, and this is what's been passed on. And you could say that there are different forces that we wouldn't consider human that have influenced that process. Some people talk about, and I have to just be clear as well that, when I speak, I'm often speaking in two ways. I'm speaking on a knowledge level about knowledge, so the knowledge that we've been given, and then I'm speaking about the limitation of that knowledge and that which cannot be known through knowledge. And sometimes when I speak, people get a little bit mad at me because they like to be on one side or the other of that. Either they like to speculate about all the different things through knowledge that is happening or could be happening, or they want to stick to the kind of non-dual side of things where it's like, well, what can you know? And ultimately I'm saying, what can you know? But at the same time, we have to use some words. We have to use the knowledge to communicate as we're doing right now. So I don't know, but some say that there has been different alien races, if you will, that are operating to this day and have done throughout humanity's past on this planet, and that almost this Earth has been like a kind of a laboratory in a way of sorts. But to me, it's not as clear as that. It's never as clear as that. There's always, it's somewhere in between, because it depends on how someone is using, you could say, what is going on here, which determines which effect it gets. If you think and feel that you are imprisoned, well, of course it feels like a prison. But if you see that the intelligence that is really here is free, then that will be what happens. That will be how it is, you see. So it's not one way or the other. These are the thought traps that people get caught in. It's an illusion of thought. The prison is trying to escape. Trying to escape is the prison. Whereas people think, no, there's a prison and I got to try to escape that prison. But what if trying to escape is the prison or reinforces the prison? Because it's not recognizing the freedom that is already here. And the prison is just the illusion of thought. And so this is what has been passed on. And you could say it's been passed on by other worldly, or should I say other earthly, not or extraterrestrial forces, in which they've given humanity their mind. We even know that part of the brain, the reptilian part of the brain. And when someone's thinking through the reptilian part of the brain, it's rooted in fear and survival, and so that then becomes the priority, So much of this has been passed on and becomes then the mind matrix. And it's really that mind matrix, who somebody thinks that they are and what they believe life to be, that is the thing that keeps them caught in an experience, because that's what creates experience, which is a certain energetic state, which then repeats things over and over again, And to break out of that is to see that this true intelligence that you are is actually not an experience. Because what creates experience? Thought creates experience. Memory creates experience. And then the experience becomes more memory. We say, oh, I had this experience. What is that? That's memory. But in the immediacy of life, there's no experience. There's just a total sensitivity, a total expression, not bound, not bound by the limitations of thought, that's been passed on. So to me, that's really the matrix. The matrix is the mind matrix, and from that mind matrix, then certain systems are created. Somebody thinks that they're separate. Oh, I've got to try and control, I've got to try and protect. So you get this hierarchy that comes down of different beings, you could say, that are caught in their own way in that mind matrix, and then seek to impose that on someone else. And it's because everyone's trying to impose it on everybody else that just gets it passed on. It gets passed on, and it continues and continues. And somewhere along the line, that cycle has to break. And it can only break with you.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess easier said than done, you know. For me, I always try to recenter myself and stay present. But it's the eternal balance, isn't it? Life does have a way of pulling you back in. You know, when you have a lot of responsibilities, and if you have a 9 to 5 job that you still have to be at every day, it seems like this habit, routine, this kind of autopilot is the norm here, right? It's very hard to break out of that, to be present. So I guess what would you recommend for people who are at the point where they realize that life really is a stage, that we're not getting out of this through voting, that this is kind of a scam? I would say that's kind of like level 2 stuff. What would you recommend for people? Like, would it simply be meditation? Would it be changing or reordering your thoughts, or just trying to observe without thought? And how would you recommend people carry that into their day to day, especially those who have a lot of responsibilities?
Well, I wouldn't recommend anything, but I wouldn't recommend anything, but I would say that looking at knowledge and the limitation of knowledge, and how life itself is not knowledge, and so cannot be known through knowledge. See, once you see the limitation of knowledge, the problem is we're using knowledge right now to communicate. Language, that's knowledge. English language. We needed knowledge to get onto this call. So to work a job, to do the things, the knowledge is needed. But when that knowledge is taken to be what life is, what you essentially are, and becomes a self-knowledge, then that's where the distortion happens. Because the knowledge is only good for certain things. It cannot encapsulate the infinite. It cannot encapsulate life, which is too vast. Knowledge tries to break things down, tries to separate, tries to segregate this part of life, that part of life. And so the moment that happens, it's no longer one, it becomes two, or it becomes many things. So it distorts. And freedom is in the position of the one, not in the position of being two. That's the duality. And that's the duality that the person exists in. Subject, object. I am here, everybody else is over there. I am here, and I'm isolated from the whole of the universe. So then there is fear, and there is this bubble of fearful experience. And then from that comes a sense of lack, in which then you feel like you've got to do things to get more in life. And so then there's a dependency on everything. And so that keeps the cycles going where people are trapped in that, where they're always relying on something else. So there's no self-sufficiency of the natural energy that is within. So just to look at that, just to look at knowledge, what is thought, and looking at the limitations of it. Life cannot be known through thought, but yet there is a sensitivity there. There is a response there, there's an intelligence there that is immediate. And it is happening. It is right there. But for some reason there's no attention given to it. The attention is all in thought. The attention is all in knowledge. So I could give many things, I could say, do this, do that, but that ultimately only perpetuates the same pattern. That only keeps somebody in a state, a time-bound state where I will eventually arrive one day. I'll eventually get there. If I just meditate enough, I'll get there. If I just practice this enough, I will get there. You know? When all along, the freedom is already there. It's already immediate. Can it be recognized? To recognize freedom, you have to recognize the prison, which is the knowledge, which is thought. All these thought traps that have been given. So looking at that, and then that extends out into what you call society. Society is not the problem. There is no real external matrix that is the ultimate problem. All that only seems to be existing because somebody's in a thought trap. The thought trap gives it energy. The thought trap is what ultimately creates it and what draws you towards it. And then it plays itself out in what seems to be an external circumstance. You know? So if one wakes up from the dream of thought, then it's not possible to be bound by any system. It may appear like it, even if this body is in prison, in a physical prison. If you're not trapped in any thought, then you are free. Even if the body is in a physical prison, because that body will only be in a physical prison temporarily. But the true intelligence that is there is forever free. So it's looking at what is real freedom. If you think the freedom is I can live a certain way, it cannot be ultimate freedom, because there will always be limitations on how you can live. If you think freedom is freedom of choice, it cannot be that way, because there will always be a limitation of what you can choose. Sometimes you only have limited, or what appears to be limited, choices. So the freedom is something much deeper. It's on the level of that natural intelligence, which is immediate, which is one, which is total. It's not local, meaning it's not isolated in one spot. It's all over the place. It's like saying space. It's like saying you can imprison space by building a house and locking all the doors and all the windows. It's like saying you've now imprisoned that space. Can it be done? No, the space is always free. No matter what you put around the space, you can't imprison the space. Because if you knock the house down, what happened to the space? The space is just the same as it always was. The space was the same before you put the house up. The space is the same while the house is there. The space is the same when the house is demolished. So the space always remains untouched. What is it within you that is untouched, you see? What is it within you that cannot be ultimately affected? There's a natural intelligence there that is unaffected. Even this body does not know that it's affected. But through thought, you think, I am affected. And so through thought, if you think you're affected, believe you're affected, that's the effect that's created. An emotion comes, oh, I feel I'm imprisoned. I feel I am this. I feel I am that. These are the thought traps. It's like a holographic, it's like a hologram that's being played out. The artificial self is like a hologram. Thought is creating the hologram. It's projecting the hologram. Holographic projection. The imagined sense of self. But if it's imagined, it's not ultimately real. It's just an image, you know. But what is there before the image, during the image, and after the image is gone? There's some intelligence that does not go anywhere. So for freedom, one must go all the way. Go all the way to that. To look and see clearly what is knowledge, thought, what is the limitation of it, and what is it that can't be known through thought? What is already immediately here and free? If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. It's just applying it is another thing. Just hearing you speak
it cannot
about
be
it.
applied. That is the issue. It cannot be applied, you see. What's trying to apply? It's the artificial self trying to apply. It's a thought. When we say apply or we say try or do, that is a thought. And the thought is in the way. So somehow, if that is recognized, maybe it stops. It's seen there's no way out. Because trying to find a way out, trying to do something or apply something to get out, is only to be more stuck in. Only reinforces it, right?
Yeah, I was laughing in my head as you were talking, because it's exactly it. That's kind of how the ego works. It, as soon as you separate from it, it sneaks its way back in to be like, I liken it to nicotine addiction. So I'm now actually a year nicotine free. I started smoking when I was like 10, right? And
Congratulations.
oh, thanks, yeah. But when you quit, it's hilarious how the addiction plays games in your mind, right? You'll hit a milestone, you'll be like, man, congratulations, you should have a cigarette to celebrate, or it'll, like, I've seen other people try to quit and they'll create dramas that will then lead them to be like, oh, I'm so stressed, I better have a cigarette, to calm down. Or I've seen other things like, it'll like manipulate your mind to think that it's logical to get back, right? And it's kind of exactly how the ego works as well, and what we would call, parasitic entities or archons or whatever. It's the same tactic that constantly brings you back to the problem that you were, struggling with in the first place, I guess. Right? And
Yeah.
Would you say it's
all
kind of similar?
it goes back to the externalization, the dependence of some other on something else, on something that's artificial. Nature is completely interdependent, but it draws its sustenance from a natural source. The matrix, if we want to call it that, is to get you to draw, to get energy from an artificial source. But the price for that is that when you try to get from the artificial source, you end up getting entangled with it, and then it draws some energy from you. Or it's set up in a way, a hierarchical way, where certain beings are able to draw energy from other beings in many different ways and forms. Through labor, through money, through control, through attention, through literal drawing of energy. It can happen in many different ways. But the primary thing is the dependence on some external source. The more food that you eat, the more the body becomes reliant on the food that you eat. But if more energy is drawn from a deeper resource, the body begins to thrive on its own energy more. It draws it from a deeper place. They say, right, in the space, there's so much energy in the empty space, like a 0 point energy. That can be tapped into. In fact, not only can it be tapped into, it is sustaining everything. So if more attention is given to that, if more reliance is given to that, then there is less need for the external sources of energy which you can then become imprisoned by. Because then something else can control that, or there's only a finite supply of it. But at the source, there is an infinite supply of it. So you never go without. But the more that somebody relies on the artificial, the more that their natural energies begin to atrophy, and they begin to lose that. So this is the same with an addiction. Cigarettes, food, sex, entertainment, whatever it may be. It's trying to get energy, depending on something to feel good, to get energy that's limited. Whenever you try to get the energy from something limited, then you become ensnared by it, trapped by it. But if you rely on the infinite, the unlimited, there's never any problem with that.
Very well said. I think it's a good transition into the idea of non-duality, or the concept of non-duality. More and more as I delve down the rabbit hole, to me, as you alluded to, when we peer into reality, it isn't there, right? Mainstream science tells us that everything is empty space, right? They say 99.99, with a billion nines, but what if it was just 100%, and pure illusion? And, our thoughts will actually change the nature of reality and particles. We're seeing there's a holographic quality to reality that even mainstream science is now reconciling. When we peer into things more, it does really seem that consciousness and thought is fundamental. I liken our reality almost to a shared dream. But I was wondering if you could, because I know you've spoken quite a bit about the concept of non-duality. Maybe you could introduce, what you think this concept means and the implications for reality itself. How do you view reality with respect to this concept of non-duality?
Well, obviously non-duality, the word itself, implies that not two but one. Existence is just one. And even though it can appear like it's many, essentially it is one. It's like if you think of an ocean and all the different waves in the ocean, many different waves, and the waves can look very different, and big waves, small waves, wide waves, narrow waves. but really all the waves are just the ocean. It appears like there's many waves, but actually what we call a wave is just simply the ocean being animated in a certain way. So the waves cannot exist without the ocean, but the ocean can exist without the waves. And what we call the waves are really just the ocean. So in essence, really there are no waves. It's just ocean. It's just water. It's all just water. So in the same way, the universe, which also means one verse or one sound, one song, is so diverse, and there are many different life and different planets, and it all appears separate, all appears different, but it's all made of that same existence. It's all the existence, has the existence running through it, and essentially is the existence. Just, we can think of like a computer screen. Right now I'm speaking to you on this screen, and there's different images on the screen. You're moving on the screen, all the little pixels that I can see, and yet all the pixels that could appear to be separate if you really zoomed in on them are all the same screen. So the images on the screen are made of the screen and are not really separate from each other because they all share the screen. So existence itself, all this multiplicity of different life, all springs from the same source and is made of the same source. So not only is the source in all things, but is as all things as well. So that means there's no distance, no separation, no time in the way that we think of it. Everything is happening at once. Or should I say, not everything is happening at once, everything is at once, or is one. So it's all there together. It's total, you know. And but in the artificial sense of self, the sense is for people, oh, I am separate, because they're focusing on a border, a boundary, because of the interpretation of the mind. They say, oh, this is where I begin, this is where I end, this body. But actually, this body is not different than the whole of the universe. The body is just what? The body is an accumulation of food, of earth. So the same substance that makes that body is really the same substance that makes this body. We're sharing the same air because we're breathing, taking in the same air from the earth. We're sharing the same water. So all the elements are actually being shared. It's all the same elements. And then if you take away the elements, if we get even further down, it's like a form of energy. And if you go even deeper than that, because energy is still moving, there's some vibration to it, there's nothing. It's still, unmoving, nothing, empty. As you said, 99.99%, well, why not 100%? You see, so it's the same, it's the same. It's ultimately all the same. And this is why, as that is seen, one thing that you might recognize is that nothing really happens or is happening. It only appears to be. And why does it appear to be happening? Only because of thought. Thought creates the appearance as if something is happening, as if things are happening. Thought puts it together, thought creates the experience. Without thought, it's like right now you're looking, like right now there's a window, I can look out the window, and somebody might think you're seeing things in 3 dimensions because you're seeing depth, But actually you don't see depth. You see things in a very two-dimensional way, a very flat way. Depth comes in through thought. Thought creates the depth. Thought fills in the blanks. Thought says, oh, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is round, this is beautiful, or this is ugly. The thought is filling in all the gaps like that, you see. So, but if you take that away, what do you see? You don't see anything. You don't see anything. Things are thoughts. Thoughts are things. So you see nothing.
Yeah, and even our consciousness is non-local, right? We believe that our consciousness exists in the brain, and there's definitely tethering there. But it's been proven definitively, out of body experiences that people can observe areas outside of the body, and remote viewing. I've actually done remote viewing myself a little bit, and it shows that even our consciousness doesn't exist within the body. Astral projection as well. Yeah, so how do we wrap our heads around that? It really is the conclusion that we aren't our bodies, that our consciousness, maybe through thought, is affixed to what we call our body, but it doesn't originate there. It's not its home, if you will. It seems to exist separately.
Yeah, the thought is creating the distinction. The thought is creating the distinction. I am here, you are over there. That then creates the experience as if it is that way. Because what's happening is, for most, they have a sense of a subject here, and so that then creates automatically for them the sense that something else is over there. But again, it's like the space. Is the space in this room, this house, any different than the space in the house across the street? The actual space. From the appearance level, you say, oh, maybe it is a different space because there's that house there and this house here. But actually, when you remove the house, you see that the space has always been the same space. So the intelligence that is there, that body, is it really any different than the intelligence that is this body or another body and so on, right? Only through the concept of the body is it. If you have the concept body, you see, we don't see what the body is, in fact. We don't know what the body is. We can't know what the body is. Cannot be known. But we have an idea of the body. We have a concept of the body. And through the concept of the body, we think we know what it is. It creates an experience of the body. But nobody actually experiences the body. There's a sensitivity here, a total sensitivity that is present, that is destroyed by the constant interpretation of thought and put into some distorted experience. So we don't even know what the body is, because we only have the concept of body. And then someone has the concept of person. I am a separate person. I am this person. All these identities. Mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter, black, white, left, right, politically left, politically right, Democrat, Republican, Labour, Conservative, you know. So that creates all these different experiences. But where do they actually exist? It's just words, it's just language. Thought is just words internalized, and words is just language. And language is what? Language is sounds. We were taught the English language, so we're interpreting. The language is being interpreted. as these words are coming. But you listen to someone speaking Russian or some alien language, what do we hear? Just sound. Just sound with no meaning to it. So the meanings are being imposed, superimposed onto everything. And then that creates an experience. You don't see things then, you just see a projection. Everything becomes this simulated projection, this holographic projection, including the image of yourself and the image of the world. So once that is seen to be a dream, just a dream created by thought, then there can be an awakening from that dream. And in the awakening of that dream, then life is simply there. And there is a true sensitivity to life for no one, for no person. Just the existence itself. All one, alone with that, completely alone with that. And there, in that sensitivity, there is a pleasantness there, in that. A natural pleasantness. Not pleasure as in we think of pleasure or as people generally think of pleasure, but a natural pleasantness, which really means to just be undisturbed by all of the thoughts and the struggle that's being created through that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I want to dive into the concept of frequency or vibration, personal frequency. And I've gone through many different belief systems, if you will, religions in the past, and I try to draw from many, but I'm most concerned about truth, finding truth in reality. Um, but for me, I've kind of concluded that I get along best with people of a certain frequency or vibration, other than, far more than what they outwardly say they believe or their even political beliefs or anything. And it really seems like there is something to this as well. I notice in my own life when my frequency is higher, I have like a range, right? We all have ranges, and I notice when I'm kind of at the higher end of my range, things come to me with ease. Things, almost miracles happen daily. And then the opposite is kind of true when I'm a bit lower vibe, if you will. I notice that reflected as well in my external environment. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on, like, what do you think frequency is, and or vibration with respect to us as humans as well. Why do you think the changing of such impacts our outer reality?
Mm.
Easy question.
Full of easy questions. Um, well, every body has a natural frequency to it. And that frequency gets distorted through the artificial self. Just like a computer comes out of its factory default manufacturing process and it operates a certain way, but if you download programs onto it, it starts to change the way that it functions. So when all of this knowledge is taken on, it starts to interfere with that natural frequency. And that natural frequency is naturally in alignment with life. But as it takes on the artificial, the knowledge becomes the artificial self or person, it starts to interfere and distort things. And so then there is a less of an alignment with life and not the ability to flow with life. And of course, that has many different effects. And the frequency is what? The frequency is like a state of energy, a certain state of energy, a certain state of frequency. And that obviously has some effect. We know, we say, I resonate with this or I don't resonate with that. I resonate with this person, I don't resonate with that person. What is that? That resonance is due to the frequency. If the body is in alignment in the natural frequency, aligned with the universe, then there is a strong resonance. A strong resonance. The heart becomes the magnetic field of a strong resonance. And then, as you alluded to, then all these kinds of synchronistic things may begin to happen, because there's a communication happening, a communication with life. And then obviously others that are operating in that similar resonance, similar frequency, you start to begin to communicate with them, things begin to happen, relationships may form, interactions may happen. And those that are not of that, there's like a missing, because the two frequencies, they have to meet. If there's different level, then they miss, you know. So as somebody becomes more natural in that natural intelligence, the resonance becomes stronger, the frequency goes to its, maybe we could say, its higher level, natural level. And then that's a way of rising out of also what we're thinking of as this kind of matrix system. The matrix system is operating at a certain frequency, and the mind matrix is operating at a match to that frequency. So when somebody's in fear, then the system that operates at a certain level through fear, through manipulation, through conflict, that person becomes a match to that, and then they get caught in that system and they end up playing that game. But if they can rise beyond that, go higher, then they break out of that particular game that's being played at that level. But there are games being played at many subtle levels. The game of fear, the game of lust, the game of greed, and so on. There's all these different kinds of games being played. These are the thought traps. So when someone's in that thought trap, they're creating that certain frequency within themselves, in which then they become a match to that in terms of what's been set up as a kind of system for that, and other so-called beings that are operating in that same kind of frequency as well. Was it they say, birds of a feather flock together? So, you know, it's why people gather in these same kind of groups, and I resonate with these, I don't resonate with them. You gravitate towards those that you resonate with. So there's something that's been called the ring pass knot, and this ring pass knot is this idea that what we call the matrix system is this certain kind of frequency bubble. And if you can return back to that natural frequency by purging out all of the artificial shit that's been put in there, then you start to shed these layers, these low frequency layers. I remember what happened here over the years was that very kind of experience took place. It was literally like a shedding, like a purging of layers, in which it was felt that these layers of frequency were literally being purged out, literally being lifted. A deeper relaxation was happening, going deeper, relaxing deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. The idea is not to try to get away from, but to relax into. And this is what seems counterintuitive to people. This is why I say a state of and this. Not a state of not this, but a state of and this.
Mm-hmm.
Because freedom is not freedom from, freedom is freedom in. So you relax into what is happening. You relax into whatever is happening as opposed to getting away from what is happening. If there is a challenge, can you relax deeply into the challenge? If you relax deeply into the challenge without your ideas about the challenge, without your internal mental resistance to it, you begin to transcend it. You break out of that certain level of frequency. And this is again how the matrix is transcended. As you purge out the mind matrix, all those thoughts, all those beliefs, all that knowledge that's been passed on, and you come to that purity of intelligence, the natural intelligence, you transcend. It transcends, transcends, transcends. Now, at some point, there might seem to be a part where you're trying to stand back from those things into a kind of impartial kind of watching or witnessing of those things. But that will come to a certain point where it will reach its limitation, in which then there has to be a complete relaxation into, a resting into whatever is happening. Because it gets so subtle that even the sense of being an impartial witness to things is also part of the mind matrix. So even that must go. In which then there is just a complete rest and relaxation into whatever is happening. And that's why I say trying to escape is the prison. Is just more of the prison, only reinforces the prison. And that's why I'm saying there's no way out. The way out is only to be stuck in. It's like the straitjacket gets tighter. You know, it's like what is it, the anaconda snakes, is it, where the more you struggle, the tighter the grip gets. Right? That's what it's like. The more you struggle against the matrix, the mind matrix. Who's struggling against the matrix? It's the mind matrix. It's the idea of I am a separate being, the person. That's part of the mind matrix. That's at the heart of the mind matrix. When that is struggling, it only reinforces it. So if you don't struggle, if you really allow yourself to be caught, then something amazing happens. There is a freedom. The freedom is realized, there's freedom there. It was always there. I was thinking it was outside of something. I had to get outside of something. Like right now in this space, all the frequencies are occupying the same space right now. Right? They're all occupying the same space right now. So there's no way you've got to get to. There's no location. It's not I've got to go there or go here to be free. You can't get out of it. It's to simply transcend that frequency, those frequencies that are occupying the same space right here. So freedom is no other place than here. Now, when I say here, I don't mean a particular location. I'm using that word because there's not many other words we can use. I mean, there's no other freedom than this. The freedom is this. Not other than this. Not over there, not over here, not in a location, not eventually one day, not in the future, not trying to return to something in the past or to repeat an experience of the past. It's the immediacy of this. To rest into this, whatever this is, there's a transcendence, there's a freedom. No longer then stuck in those lower frequencies.
It's incredibly well put. That seems to be the game, right? Is always looking to a future date, always looking for something outside of ourselves, and yeah, I'm guilty of that all the time. But it really is being present now and realizing there is nothing to do. Right?
Not that, yeah, not even that there is nothing to do, but that there is no one that can do. That there is no one there that can do is the deeper thing. You see, if we say there's nothing to do, then there is someone there that still thinks that they can do, that they are a doer, a separate doer. And they say, okay, there's nothing I can do, so I'll just go and do something else instead. But that's not the freedom. The freedom is in seeing that there is no one that is doing anything, that it is the deeper intelligence, the natural intelligence that's doing everything. Like right now, are you doing the body? Are you doing the breath? Are you doing blinking? Are you doing the neurons firing off in the brain? Are you doing the digestion of food? Are you doing the regeneration of cells? Are you doing the growing of the hair, the skin, and the nails? Any of it? No, none of it. So that's part of the mind matrix. Part of the mind matrix is the idea that there is someone there as a separate person that is doing something and has to do something, and that freedom depends on them doing something. And that's the tricky part of it. That's what keeps the illusion going. Because every time you try to do, or even say, I'm not going to do, it's still being under the illusion that there is someone there that is separate. And not to recognize the this natural intelligence that is the real controller, if I can use that word. I can't think of a better word than that at the moment, but the one that's taking care of everything. You know? So in this thought that someone is separate and they've got to get somewhere, it becomes this kind of holographic simulation that's playing itself out, this game of never enough, trying to always get somewhere else, trying to become something more, achieve something more, including freedom. And that only keeps the mirage going. That's the Groundhog Day, that's the loop, you know. So it's a very subtle thing, but it's very simple in the true sense, it's very simple. In the relative sense, it's very complex. To the artificial self, it's very complex. And the problem is it can never get outside of itself. So it's always in the way. Every attempt it tries to make to get outside of itself is only to remain in itself, to remain as itself, to reinforce itself. It's like trying to stop the mind with a thought. It's like trying to stop thinking with more thinking. Can it be done? No. Cannot be done.
I like to say
Somehow
it's
it
either.
stops.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I just like saying it's either easy or impossible. Kind of in the same vein, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, there's no it's not there's no black or there's no shade of grey with it. Either you either you drop it totally, either it is dropped totally or not at all. And it's the fear that stops it being dropped totally. The person fears its own annihilation, its own death, its own absence. So it will do what it can to keep it in place, even if it means suffering, even if it means feeling trapped.
Yeah, I think. Oh, it's probably a good place to leave it. What more can be said? Uh, uh, yeah. Are there any other thoughts or things you'd like to leave people with? I think this is doing a lot of good for a lot of people.
The seeker can't come to an end by its own volition. The one that feels trapped, the person cannot stop seeking because the person is naturally a seeker, so it will continue and continue. So even when this is recognized in an intellectual way, and somebody says, okay, I can see that every attempt I make is only reinforcing that. And it will say, okay, I'm going to stop then. Is often only to trick itself again. So sometimes what I say is the seeker can't stop seeking. Seeking comes to an end only when the seeker ends. So the person, somehow it is seen that the illusion of what I thought I was is not there. In seeing it is not there, there is freedom. But until that point, one must go all the way. And this can seem like the paradox of it. The effort towards that becomes more and more effortless until there is no effort. And the no effort is when it is seen that there is no one there that is trapped. Who is it that is bound? Good to chat with you, mate.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for your time and wisdom. Are are you still doing regular events? Am I understanding that correctly? That you do kind of meditations or retreats or something?
Not at the moment. There is a retreat going on the 21st of July in the Netherlands. That's a 6-day retreat. So if someone wants to go all the way, I would highly recommend that. And potentially one in the States. We're in discussions at the moment in Vermont, in the state of Vermont, potentially. Could be this year, either summer or the back end of the year. We're in discussions to do with that. So if anybody is in that area and would like to attend one of those, then feel free to reach out if you wish. But in terms of online events, not at the moment.
Maybe we could do something here in Canada. We'll talk offline about that. Yeah, maybe we'll get a Canadian CJ Smith chapter going here. We need it. We need more CJ. Great. Well, how can I have your YouTube channel below, but how can people find you, support you? Yeah, please.
So you can check out the, if you wish, the website, christopherjsmith.com, or Christopher J. Smith on Facebook and Instagram.
Okay, that's great. All right, guys. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining the stream today. I'm gonna have to listen to this a few times to really soak up what CJ's saying, and really not apply but embrace what he is saying. It's a bit of it's a post-mind solution, guys. This is the challenge, because the mind's always trying to say, no, what within the realm of the mind can I do to fix it? And it's more of a process of undoing, of unminding, which it's very trippy in a way. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for watching, supporting the stream. I also want to thank Marcus and Joel for recently supporting and donating, as well as Connor at buymeacoffee.com. If you want to support the podcast, it is buymeacoffee.com/thespellbreakerspodcast. Thanks, everybody. I'll be shutting down the stream here, but please support CJ, and yeah, keep in touch, guys.